Greetings. Today we're going to be doing a review on MIXTAPE. MIXTAPE is one of the weirdest games that I have ever played. Not because of the subject material or anything like that, and not because of the tongue wrestling minigame, but because of the discourse surrounding it. I haven't really seen a whole lot of games that have had this level of polarizing opinions on it. A lot of outlets are giving it like a solid 10 out of 10, saying that it's a masterpiece, while there's a lot of weirdo creators on Twitter that are acting like it's the worst game that was ever made. I don't agree with either of those. I think it falls somewhere definitely right in the middle. It's not the greatest game, but it's definitely not the worst. This review is going to be full of spoilers, so if that's something you're worried about, if you haven't played the game yet, maybe click off of this video. Otherwise, strap on in. This is not sponsored. Played the game through Game Pass, and the review is going to be covering my experience with the game, as well as the 100% for the achievement completion towards the end. MIXTAPE is a narrative adventure game that takes place in the mid to late 1990s in the fictional Northern California town of Blue Moon Lagoon, and it does its best to make sure that you're aware that it's taking place in the late 1990s every step of the way. It's a coming-of-age story that follows three high school best friends, Stacy, Cassandra, and Slater, as they get ready for a party that's going to be the last hurrah before they graduate high school, and the main character, Stacy, moves away to New York. Friends, Cassandra and Slater, are obviously pretty upset about this whole situation, and since this game takes place not in the modern era, well before we had cell phones or instant messaging or FaceTime or anything like that, it's kind of a big deal. They may never see each other again. Originally, they had planned a road trip. However, Stacy decided that she was going to stalk some sort of like music producer or something like that, and that producer just happened to be in New York at this time. So the whole idea is she's going to move to New York and try to get her mixtapes out to this producer and make it big there. Luckily for her, her sister also lives in New York, and she's attending Juilliard, so that's kind of her plan, is to stay with her sister. The three main characters, Stacy, Cassandra, and Slater, are your stereotypical angsty teenagers. Stacy is the music-obsessed, fuck the system, rebel without a care. Cassandra was a softball star who became friends with Stacy and Slater and is no longer really caring about her academics or anything like that. And Slater is the will they, won't they love interest, but that's only ever touched on really twice in the game, once in a flashback and once at the very end. So I don't know if that was just something that I was picking up on or if that's actually a plot point. Stoner. And then, of course, you have their parents as well. You have Stacy's parents, who aren't in the game at all. You have Cassandra, who her dad is a super cop, maybe the chief of police, and he obviously doesn't like the other two very much because he doesn't like that his daughter is hanging out with and becoming a delinquent. And you have Slater's mom, who is the carefree, I'm going to give my children alcohol parent. So typical 90s cliches right there. The game lets you experience basically anything that a teenager in the 1990s would have been doing. So you've got your skateboarding down the street, you got your going to the video rental store late at night and picking out a couple of movies to watch with your friends, going to the mall and messing around in the photo booth, and then going to the secret hideout where your older sibling just happened to have a legendary stash of booze. The game certainly panders to people that were teenagers in the late 80s and early 90s with its narrative beats, the soundtrack, and basically everything else about it. I can see why so many outlets were so high on it, because a lot of the people that were writing for these outlets were probably teenagers around that time, so it's basically just a trip down memory lane for them. I was born in the mid-90s, so while some of the story beats do resonate with me, a lot of it doesn't. The soundtrack is one that is very much not up my alley. It's just not a type of music that I prefer to listen to. The music that I grew up is more of the nu metal or hard rock and stuff like that, so a lot of the metal or rock from this era is just not stuff that resonates with me. I understand, though, that the soundtrack obviously is a very big draw of the game, and I won't disparage its quality. I will say the soundtrack is very good. It's just not the type of music that I typically listen to. I will say I am very curious how the game will hold up in the future. All of this is licensed music, so with the game being digital only, I understand that it's an indie studio, so I don't know if they'll renew those licenses or if they'll alter it in the future once these licenses line up. But as far as game preservation goes, this is a digital-only game. So once those licenses are up, does the game have to be delisted, and is the game just lost forever? Something that I'm very curious about. I'm not sure how that'll pan out in the future. So hopefully somebody has something planned there. Otherwise, the game will just be gone and it will never be seen again. There's so many games like that where you can find them you can find them physically, right? You got your old Transformers games, you have Rock Band, Tony Hawk, stuff like that, where the music license expired, but the game was still available physical, so you can still own it somehow. Whereas if you can only own this game digitally, once it's gone, it's gone. There's 3 major points of conflict in this game. The aforementioned Stacy moving to New York, Cassandra's dad not wanting her to be a delinquent, and Jenny fucking Goodspeed. So Jenny Goodspeed is another character, one of the only other characters that are ever actually mentioned in the game. And the only reason that Stacy doesn't like Jenny Goodspeed is because I think they had a conversation at one point and Jenny Goodspeed wasn't super interested in music. And that was pretty much the crux of it. Jenny Goodspeed and Cassandra were friends and they hung out together. There's a whole flashback scene where Stacy was trying to hang out with Cassandra, but Cassandra said she was busy, and then Stacy happened to go out and see Jenny Goodspeed and Cassandra hanging out, and that pissed Stacy off. It was a pretty cool scene where you're basically floating through the city, listening to, I don't remember what song it was, but you're basically floating through the city, and it's all black and white, and you got these giant pig balloons that you pounce through, and it's an emotional scene. It's fun, but all 3 of these conflicts are basically resolved at the end of the game at the party, and not with any sort of pomp and circumstance. Basically, Slater and Cassandra come to terms with the fact that Stacy's moving away, and just that's it. Stacy and Jenny have a conversation at the party for the entire party, because you play Slater during the party, and I guess they are on better terms and not hate each other because whatever stupid reason. And Cassandra's dad, for some reason, is okay with her becoming a delinquent, drinking underage, and burning down the shack that they were having the party at. So yeah, that's how the conflicts in this game are resolved. What about the gameplay of it? So when I think of a narrative adventure game, I think of games like the Telltale games, Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, Batman, stuff like that. The Don't Nod games, such as the Life is Strange series, which is basically the main thing that they're known for, or something like the supermassive games such as Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology. And all those games, being narrative stories, they are light on the gameplay, but most of them either have puzzles of some sort or they have branching choices. So the dialogue options and the things that you do in the game matter, and you'll have a different outcome depending on what you choose. This game doesn't have any of that. So there's a handful of mini games, which I'll get to shortly, but outside of that, there's not really much gameplay. You have skating, which is okay, but it makes you wish you were playing a skating game. You wish you were playing Skate or Tony Hawk or something like that, because you can do a few tricks, but it doesn't feel great. The mini games aren't great either, honestly. You have the tongue wrestling mini game. You have a mini game where you literally paint a door. You have a mini game where you move a couch, and you have a mini game where you have to make fireworks go off. It's limited gameplay, and all of that stuff is optional. You don't have to interact with any of it. You can play this entire game without much interactivity, which is fine in theory. There are other narrative games that have very limited gameplay and interactivity that are more just like walking simulators, but I feel like the content that they cover is much heavier and much, I don't know, better covered. So you have games like Firewatch or That Dragon Cancer, which cover very heavy content. So obviously they're not gameplay focused. It's telling you a story and you're interacting with that story. Whereas this one it's just a 90s nostalgia trip. That's all it is. There's very little conflict, no stakes. The main character kind of sucks. And yeah, it's just a 90s nostalgia trip. I mentioned in the beginning that this is a review based on my experience with the game as well as the 100% of the achievements. So let's talk about the achievements a little bit. The achievements in this game they're all right. So you have your basic complete the story, complete the game, and a handful of story beats. You've got some for mini games and completing them in certain ways. So all of those mini games that I mentioned earlier, you have painting the door, you've got to do that in under 30 seconds. You have moving the couch, you've got to do that in under 30 seconds. You've got hitting cans with a slingshot, you got to do that in under 30 seconds. Nothing super creative, everything is kind of doing it under 30 seconds. You have to do the tongue wrestling game for a minute, so you just have to basically sit there while these wet floppy tongues are just on your screen for 60 seconds, and it's not fun to watch. It's got a few very annoying ones. So the most annoying one is probably the one for interacting with everything in all of the bedrooms and unlocking all the conversations or listening to all the conversations. There's no indicator on like how many you have or how many you need or anything like that. And some of the little white dots are kind of hard to see. So it's kind of like, oh, hey, did I get this one? And at certain points, you do have to progress the story in the bedroom for other things to appear. It's a weird achievement. It's not great. There's one for having to hit all home runs. So there's a baseball mini game where you play as Cassandra and you have to hit all home runs. But before you play as Cassandra, you have to play as Stacy, who sucks at softball. You have to play as Stacy, who sucks at softball. So you have to play through that and the cutscene and then hope you hit, it's like 7 or 8, I think, home runs without missing a single one. If you mess up, there is a chapter select, so you can go back and redo it, which is fine. But the cutscenes aren't skippable, and you have to do the Stacy part every time. And then the last achievement that was pretty annoying is there's a drive towards the end of the game, and you start flying in the car, Harry Potter style, and you have to basically conduct all the fireworks to go off. So you have to mash the triggers or the X button on the controller and hope that you're able to make all those fireworks go off. Otherwise, you have a pretty long scene that you have to replay before you can get back to that part. All in all, the achievements are pretty easy to complete. I'd say it probably takes about 5 hours to do everything, probably a little faster if you have a guide and you're following that. The game itself isn't very long. You could probably complete the game itself in maybe 2 to 3 hours. MIXTAPE sets out to send you on a feel-good coming-of-age adventure, and what it tries to do with that, it does well enough. However, it plays more like an interactive movie than a narrative adventure game. When I think of a narrative adventure game, 3 things typically draw me in: the choices, the characters, and the story. And this game is pretty lacking in all 3 of those departments. There are no choices. There is no sort of different outcome regardless of how you play the game, whether you interact with the mini games or do anything like that. You can basically just watch the game with limited gameplay other than walking to the next destination. I feel like the characters are all paper thin. There's 3 main characters, and there's not really any character development from those main characters. Stacy still moves away. Cassandra comes to terms with that for whatever reason and remains a delinquent. And Slater is a stoner, and that's basically where the 3 characters start the story and end the story. There's no sort of development. There's no supporting cast to speak of, really. You have Cassandra's dad, the cop, who for whatever reason just becomes okay with her being a delinquent. You have Slater's mom, who is in one scene and that's it. And you have Ginny Goodspeed, who is apparently just a fine person all around, and because Stacy just didn't like her for no real good reason. There's a couple of other characters that you meet at the end in that driving scene in the party, but outside of that, there's not really any characters. And the story is, it's just a 90s movie. It's an American Pie, a Ferris Bueller's Day Off. It's a movie that you watch, you feel good, you feel nostalgic about at the end, but it's not a story that's really going to pull on any heartstrings. There's not good conflict resolution. There's not any sort of like super emotional story beats. Like there's the one scene where you're floating through town after seeing your best friend hanging out with someone else, and that's basically the crux of it. There's not a whole lot of story there. What it does well. It's a nostalgia bait 90s movie. That's basically what it is, and if that's what they wanted to set out to do, it worked out great. I really don't think it's the worst game that was ever made, but it's definitely not the best either. It's definitely not a 10 out of 10. It's a solid 7 for me. I am very curious to see what sort of situation happens in the future with all the licensed music in it, see if it's able to remain on storefronts or if it just gets delisted and disappears from the ethos forever. What are your thoughts on MIXTAPE? Did you enjoy it? Do you think it's the best game ever? Do you think it's the worst game ever? Or do you land somewhere in the middle like myself? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to hit those notification buttons, like, comment, subscribe, and all that other fun YouTube shit. As always, I will see you in the next one. Peace!